Welcome back to the Queens of Commerce. I'm Shannon Hodock.
And I'm Stephanie Nelson. And today we're welcomed by our special guest, John Carroll. More on that in just a little bit. But Shannon, first, what is today's topic of our podcast?
Well, we're going to be talking about the quickly evolving world of CPG and agencies, all focused on the idea of commerce. Rules are changing, client expectations are evolving, the role of data, technology, AI, accountability. It all leads to driving real business outcomes, but it's changing on a daily and sometimes just a weekly basis. So, Stephanie, before we get into that, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, I think the capabilities that were nice to have 5 years ago have truly now become table stakes. I think a lot of the business is still operating as a legacy model. And so they haven't adapted to the rate at which AI is influencing the consumer, let alone their business outcomes. And John, I know you've had a first row seat to how dramatically CPG, retail, and agency partners have evolved and really understand what still matters and what do brands and agencies really need to do to build what's next. So we're going to kick it off first with hearing a little bit about you before we dive into our 2-minute drill. So John, I'd love to hear a bit more and share with the audience your background.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Shannon. I'm honored to be on this new podcast. What am I guest number 2 or number 3?
You're number 1.
I'm number 1. Okay, now I'm really honored. I feel great that I'm guest number 1. I appreciate it. I'm so excited that both of you are doing this podcast. I think it's really important for the industry. I love this industry. I've been in the CPG retail industry my whole life. My dad was a retail manager for Grand Union supermarkets, so I was involved with it as a kid. I worked retail all through high school. I worked retail all through college, and then my first job was with Procter & Gamble, and I got to spend time at one of the world's greatest consumer products companies for about 6 or 7 years. And then I was at Coke for 25 years. And Coke was a wonderful place. It was a front row seat to what was happening with the consumer and the retailer and the industry. I got to do work on the sales side, on the commercial side, spent time on the brand side, which was wonderful. And also working very closely with our bottling system. Anybody that knows about Coke knows that the bottling system, the franchise system, is a really important part of building the Coca-Cola business and driving growth. And then my last assignment there, I led our digital commerce business for Coke North America. Left there and then did a little consulting on the side, deciding what I wanted to do after I retired from Coke. And then I've been at Acosta Group now for 6 years, which has been wonderful. It's been a fantastic part of the business, a really important part of the industry. I've always worked really closely with the agencies, both on the sales side and the marketing side my whole career. So it was a great opportunity to come over to the great legacy that Acosta has left from an industry standpoint. Came in as chief growth officer, helped with the repositioning of the company. And for the last several years, we've built what we call connected commerce, which is end-to-end digital commerce services combined with shopper marketing. It's really the way that most of the industry, both from a CPG standpoint and a retailer standpoint, are looking at the business and driving growth. So it's good to be part of that.
Awesome. Well, we're so lucky to have you, and thank you for joining us. So we start these podcasts out with rapid fire, quick questions, 2-minute drill before we get into the discussion. So Steph, why don't you start?
Just like the way we work together every single day, right? So this is nothing new for you.
Pretty much. We keep each other on our toes. So the first question we have for you, John, is what do you think is something that was nice to have 5 years ago or 2 years ago, but now you would consider table stakes in how a CPG or an agency might operate?
So I'd always go to data and analytics and understanding what's happening with the consumer and the shopper, understanding the retailer. That's always been a basic premise of the industry. And it's interesting, being in the industry almost 40 years, I've seen 3 really big shifts in the industry. The first in the early 90s was Walmart and the advent of the national customers and the different channels, the Whole Foods, the club channel, the dollar channel. That really changed the complexion of how CPG did business and how consumers actually shop. That was a massive change. The second one was over a decade ago, and that's what I always call route to me. We coined that phrase at the Coca-Cola Company. So getting products anytime, any place to you when you want those products. And that's really about the digital commerce opportunity that has happened over the last decade or so. What's really interesting about that is a fun fact that I like to share now is before COVID, it was less than 5% of total business. It's approaching in the next less than 12 months, it'll be 25% of the total food and beverage category business online purchases and over 80% of the growth. So that was another massive change. And now what we're seeing is even more of the massive change with what's happening from a technology perspective and what's happening in understanding AI and using AI from an operational standpoint with the business, whether you're a CPG or from a retailer perspective. So what I would say from a table stakes standpoint, it's great data, being able to harness that great data through technology and large language models and bringing all that data together. But at the heart of it, it's still people. And that's what this industry is all about. It's about great people and strong relationships. And it's making sure that the consumer and shopper is pleased every single day when they're shopping for groceries, when they're heading to a drugstore, when they're having dinner with their family and their favorite restaurant, or they're getting an order delivered to their doorstep. That's what we do every single day. And that's what makes this industry great. So it's better use of data and technology, but it's also continuing to have those strong relationships. And I think there's a big opportunity that we have in front of us on how to use both of those things and leverage both of those things to get this industry back to growth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what everybody's looking for, growth. That seems to be, it's always been the key word, but it's more meaningful than ever because it's so hard to come. So when you think about an agency and you think about clients and how close we partner with them, we're typically an extension of their team, living and breathing in the trenches with them on an everyday basis. But what do you think a client expectation has changed the most in the context of how the industry is changing?
It's really about the capabilities. And I think the first job of an agency is to be ahead from a capability standpoint to help their clients be more strategic and to make sure that those brands are growing the right way, at the right customers, at the right time, with the right consumer. And I think, good agencies today are the ones that are ahead from a technology perspective. And that's whether that's having great capabilities from a digital commerce perspective, having great capabilities from an AI standpoint, really strong from a business planning standpoint. But what great agencies need to do, and this is one of my favorite things about working for Acosta Group, is you're able to see lots of different companies. We work with over 3,500 CPGs. We work with all the retailers. We see the different strategies. We get to understand what each consumer products company, each retailer wants to accomplish. It's bringing those things together in a very strong plan backed by data and analytics and insights to really drive the business. And I think that's what a good agency of the future needs to do and really needs to work from a client perspective, is staying a step ahead of the client from a capability standpoint, understanding their business, and then bringing the great solutions to life with the retailers and with consumers and shoppers.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you. Steph, how about one more and then we'll jump into the core of the conversation.
Okay. What do you think is most underappreciated in the way AI changes the agency work model?
I think how fast we can get to the answer. And, since I've been in the industry for such a long time, I'll give you a few examples. When I first started doing category management work back in the middle 90s, you literally ran a Nielsen report that took 24 hours to get the data. And up to a year or two ago, it would take 4 to 5 days to a week to really develop a great category review, whether that was a line review, whether that was new item introductions, whether it was optimization from a shelf perspective. It took a lot of time for an analyst to do really good work with the data, figuring out how to get the Nielsen data, the sales data, the consumer data, and bringing that all together. What's fascinating now and what's really changing the way that we do business is that through AI, bringing all those data sets together, the insight is happening within minutes. And so being able to leverage that data and information and then spending more time with the client focusing on brainstorming a solution that's right for the retailer is the big change that's happening right now in the industry.
I couldn't agree more. It's wild. And you said this earlier on digital penetration. I remember some of my early days at Target, they were pushing brands to grow their digital penetration, and every single brand laughing in their face and saying, you're a brick and mortar company. And to see just in a short period of time that exponential growth, I can only imagine what the next 5 to 10 years in having this exact same conversation will bring.
We talked about agentic commerce yet and agentic shopping. And, that 25%, I always think about things from a case perspective from a CPG company standpoint. That means 1 out of 4 cases shipped out of a CPG warehouse now is bought online. And that's a pretty incredible stat. And that's only going to get larger. There's categories like coffee and paper that are well above 30% now, vitamins that are well above 50%. So you're going to see more and more of that.
So let's transition. Today's topic is really about the evolution in the space. And what I would say is one of those biggest changes, and we've touched on a little bit, is how CPGs are driving growth. From your perspective, John, what are the things that CPGs keep in the toolbox to continue to be growth accelerants versus what are the new things they need to add to the toolbox to drive the future growth?
Well, that's the calculus that the industry has to do right now. We're not where we need to be from a growth standpoint. I mean, this is an industry that you could bank on 3 to 4% growth every single year for the past couple decades. 1 to 3% unit growth. There was a little price mix in there, and it was a very healthy industry overall. Now, we all know we've seen flat unit growth to declining unit growth, especially in some core categories and center store categories. And we're seeing about 1 to 2% growth from a dollar perspective. So that has to change dramatically. We need to get back to unit growth. And a lot of questions about why unit growth. Well, units are important. Units are important from a CPG company standpoint because it helps from a manufacturing efficiency and cost standpoint. Units mean faster turns from a retailer standpoint. It's good for their real estate. It helps them drive overall profit. Fast turns are important in the retail industry. And then thirdly, it's good for the consumer. The more units in the basket, the better value that they have. So we've got to get back to that unit growth overall. And that's going to require a bit of a different formula than we've had in the past. I think there's two things that we have to think about. One is organizationally, and two is technology. And I'll start with technology first. We need to make sure that we are developing the right formulas from a data perspective to help us drive the business. We're an insight-driven business, insight to action. So what AI gives us the opportunity to do is to bring all of those data together, whether it's warehouse data, consumer data, Nielsen data, customer data, bringing all that data together, developing AI models that answer questions very quickly, whether you're a key account manager that's trying to build out a call plan on Publix, whether you're a supply chain manager trying to figure out a great forecast, whether you're doing retail execution and understanding how to best cover the stores that you have in your territory. AI will help us do that. And that's going to happen very quickly. These models are going very fast. In an industry that has been slow to adopt technology, and we know we have been over the past decade or so, this is going very rapidly, especially from a retailer perspective, making changes in the way that they do business. So that's the first thing, understanding how to use the data. And then the second thing is organizationally. And I think this is something that we need to look at ourselves in the face from a CPG reality standpoint and an agency standpoint. CPG is traditionally very siloed, very hierarchical. It takes a lot of time to make a decision. And in the world in data and AI, if you look at the technology companies, they make very fast decisions based on the data. So I think we're going to see a view that really reacts to how technology works and AI works. And we're going to see different organizational structures manifest around that data to make us go faster. And when we go faster, we're going to be able to do things like develop the right packaging, meet new need states and occasions for consumers faster through innovation. And we're going to be able to do better things from a pricing and segmentation perspective to better understand consumers. So I think we've got to look at different organizational design in the world of CPG. And I think agencies need to react to that to help the CPG companies do their job better, more efficiently, to help retailers drive their business and grow their business.
So, John, I have a question for you regarding the unit growth observation, because I think that's an important one. And having previously sat in the Acosta sales organization, I feel like we started talking about that shift to unit growth 3 years ago. Why haven't we gotten there yet?
So I think part of it is the consumer. We're definitely in a bifurcated economy right now. You've got the upper end of the economy that's really strong, and then you have the lower end that's really struggling from a consumer demographic perspective. They're shifting and they're going to a lot of different outlets. So you're definitely going to be buying less units in a value store than you would be in a grocery store. So I think there's definitely some kind of structural things happening from a consumer perspective that's leading to this decline. But there's also some really healthy categories out there. I mean, look at brands like Poppy and Olipop, a Touchland premium sanitizer company that we've worked with on Amazon that just got bought in Church and Dwight. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of products out there that are growing because they're meeting the needs and the demands of the consumer. They're coming up with unique ideas to help consumers lead their lives better and solve problems. And I think that's where CPG needs to reground itself, is understanding what the shopper really wants, what the consumer really wants, and developing the right innovation, whether it's packaging innovation, whether it's product information, whether it's functional nutritional or emotional benefits that we give the consumer, we have to rethink that to get to that next level to get back to growth. And that will give unit growth. If you do that well, you're going to start to see those units grow again.
I was at Sephora this week with my 18-year-old daughter, and I do not even want to tell you how many units of Touchland we bought.
Yeah.
Did you see an ad first, please?
Did not see an ad, but it was the whole idea. And this is actually really interesting. She had gotten on the Touchland trend, but she wanted the peanuts version of the Touchland. So the smell isn't any different. The unit isn't any different. You do character and some licensing on there, and it's a great marketing idea and everybody's got to have it. It doesn't matter if you already have 4, right? So that's driving that unit value to continue to buy more. Be damned, you've already got 6.
Yeah. And that's sanitizer, right? I mean, that is a company that completely reimagines sanitizer. I'm an ex-beverage executive. I'll always be a beverage executive in my heart. And I mentioned Poppy and I mentioned Olipop. Another good example is a brand called Just Iced Tea, organic fair trade iced tea. And it's a premium product and they're selling it for $3 a 16-ounce bottle. That business is going through the roof right now. And there are dozens and dozens of examples of brands that are doing that because they really understand the consumer, because they really understand how to meet those consumers' needs and are offering something unique and different, better and special. Now, we all know that 90% of new brands fail too. So it's certainly not an easy thing to do. But I think this industry has the smarts, has the capital to make the investment, to make the changes that need to happen to regrow this business and get back to growth.
Yeah. Well, you're talking a lot about risk, right? And I don't think a lot of CPGs are always willing to take that risk.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you alluded to, John, and all of these things, and I think we do a really good job of leading with this, is it does come back to the shopper. So what is that consumer behavior?
Right.
I think that my observation in a lot of this and CPG being unwilling to change is if you were to put your line in the sand, what do you feel like is driving the most friction in that organizational structure to get to this change?
Yeah. And, it's funny because if you look at startup companies, they're small companies, they're 40 or 50 people. One of the reasons why they're successful is they're making fast decisions. They don't have the capital, they don't have the people, so they have to make fast decisions. They don't have the budgets for massive market research or consumer research. So they're making decisions based on what they understand and they keep a pulse on what's going on in the marketplace, especially through their social media, especially with discussions from a retailer perspective. So that's one end of the spectrum. That's why you see such great innovation happen. The other end of the spectrum is you have the larger companies out there, the Cokes and the P&Gs that are reorganizing and becoming more focused on flattening the organization out. And, growing up in CPG, I always say there are dozens and dozens of people that can say no. There are very few people that can say yes to a decision. And I think that's the problem. We only have a few people that can say yes to decisions and a lot of people that can say no to decisions. So I think most of the CPGs out there are kind of rethinking that because technology and the consumer are moving so fast, they're going to react to that. And I think companies that we work with like Coke are making those great decisions and you're seeing some massive changes from an organizational design. You're seeing investments in from a technology and an AI standpoint. And I think that's the standard. So this will happen. And we've got such great, bold leaders in this industry. When I started talking about e-commerce, digital commerce, 10 years ago, you had people that were in the boardroom that their eyes would glaze over, like they didn't know what you were talking about. Now, what you have is you have people that have grown up with digital commerce, that grew up with the internet, that are comfortable with technology, that are VP and above level senior executives now in these organizations that are leading the charge so they understand it better. They get where the consumer is going. So I think that's one of the reasons why you're going to see this big shift. And I'm very confident that we'll get there.
Yeah, I think the future is very fascinating. If you had to take a guess, so we've talked about AI, we've talked about risk, we've talked about the need for speed, we talked about what is happening that we probably didn't expect. But what is something that maybe in the next 3 to 5 years you think agencies are going to have to really be thinking about differently beyond what we've already talked about?
Yeah. So I think the big change that we're going to see in this industry and any industry based on technology and AI is speed. I think about how long it takes something to get done in this industry. Think about developing pricing for a customer or doing planograms or putting a retail execution plan together. I mean, it just takes a long time to do that. And so I think what you're going to see with AI, and we're already seeing, is that those things those cycles will take shorter times to do that work. So there won't be as much of the quote unquote busy work. I think what the other piece from a CPG company perspective is they're going to want to go faster and they're going to want to become more profitable. So I think that's where agencies come in. Agencies can help CPGs, number one, be more strategic, but they can also help with the busy work and getting into the relationships that matter with customers and with consumers. So I think that's what agencies are best at, is kind of seeing ahead and working with the CPG companies and the retailers to develop the right plans to help them drive their bottom line. It's a great flywheel. And had an old boss, Sandy Douglas, who's a mentor in my career, who was president of Coke North America. He's now CEO of UNFI. And he always talked about the virtuous cycle. When we made more money at Coke North America, we invested that money back into the brands through advertising and great sales tactics. And that paid off. I mean, the more you do that, the better that you get. So I think that's really what's going to happen. You're going to have more speed. It's going to be a faster way of doing business, an organization that is flatter, and there's going to be more partnerships. Partnerships with agencies are going to be more important than ever because the agencies are going to be ahead. They're going to have the relationships with the customers. They're going to see what's coming, and they're going to be able to do a lot of this work that CPGs don't have to do moving forward.
So Steph, for you and I are in the thick of it every day. What's your hot take on the biggest prediction of the future for agencies?
Well, I agree a lot with what John has already articulated, but what I would add is this element surrounding the value that humans bring to the business today and the value that they're going to bring in the future because of the simple fact of how fast you'll get to the insight is how the skill sets in which we hire for and the type of talent that we hire for is dramatically going to change. And it's already changing, but I only anticipate it to continue to accelerate. At the end of the day, this still is a people business. People are buying relationships, but the relationship that they're buying today and the value of that and the relationship that they're buying 3 to 5 years from now, I think looks very different.
100%. Any final thoughts for us, John?
My final thought is this is one of the world's greatest industries to work in. I remember, when I graduated college a long time ago, if you got a job with Coke or Procter & Gamble or J&J, those were the premier jobs. This was the industry to be in. Now it's a little more tech oriented. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be in tech. I want to be in the middle of AI. And, my push and my focus to anybody early in career that's graduating or early in career is that this is a great industry to be in because you can use those skills from a technology standpoint. We need people that really understand the tech aspect and are willing to push very hard on that and help the industry think more expansively. But it's also a great industry because no matter where you go, whether it's a dinner or a cocktail party, and you tell people that you work for a Coca-Cola or a Procter & Gamble, you have something to relate to because people love brands and they use brands all the time. So it's really a combination of strong relationships and growing those relationships. And I've got relationships with people that I've been in the business with for almost 40 years that are still some of my closest friends. It's that relationship aspect of it combined with where this industry is going from a technology standpoint. It's a great place to be.
Yeah, I love it.
Would you tell someone that is entering college today the skill they need to learn in a class they need to take that probably maybe isn't in the curriculum?
Sales 101, influencing 101, I think is one of the most important classes. And, no matter what part of business that you're going to be in, your influencing skills are going to be some of your most important skills. You're not just influencing customers or clients, but influencing people internally and multifunctional. It's a really important skill set. I don't think we do enough in our curriculum from a college perspective to help with that. So all the AI and the technology and the statistics classes and all those things are super important. But I think if you can add a class of curriculum, it would be like influencing 101.
Well, thank you, John, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Thanks for everybody who tuned in to listen, and we can't wait for you to tune in next time. Have a great day, everybody.
Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks.